I knew his face, his voice, his scars because I buried them myself. That truth settled in my chest like a frozen weight the moment our lamps found him standing in the darkness of the abandoned manufactorum. The place was a cathedral of rust and dead machinery, its ancient conveyor belts sagging under layers of dust, its chains swaying gently in stale, recycled air. The stink of old lubricants clung to everything, sharp as iron on the tongue. But none of that unsettled me, only him. Corporal Wren stood on the gantry above us, barefoot, uniform torn in ways I remembered far too well. His skin looked pale, drained, as if the manufactorum's cold had seeped into his bones and never left. For a long moment he didn't speak. He only blinked into the glare of our lamps, confused and vulnerable, as if waking from a nightmare. Joran, standing beside me, let out a breath. Emperor's Mercy. That's Wren. The name echoed like a curse. Wren flinched at the sound, then found my eyes. In the gloom, recognition bloomed slowly across his face. Sergeant. His voice cracked, dry and unused, rasping across the metal like sandpaper. Is that you? My hands froze around my weapon. Every instinct shouted to raise it. Every memory screamed to lower it. My squad shifted beside me, weapons held uncertainly, fear twitching in the corners of their movements. Because Wren was dead. I remembered the battlefield where he fell, how the mud clung to our boots, how the smoke thickened the air until it tasted like ash, how Wren kept apologizing between ragged breaths as blood filled his lungs. I remembered dragging him behind broken plating, feeling his heartbeat fade. I remembered closing his eyes when they lost their light. I buried him with my own hands, wrapping him in the torn remnant of our regimental banner. And yet here he stood, alive, speaking, wearing the same torn uniform he had died in. Someone behind me whispered, "Maybe he didn't die. Maybe we were wrong." No. The commissar had confirmed every corpse. Wren's tags were logged, stamped, ritualized. He was dead. Dead men do not walk. Wren took a step toward us, the metal grating groaning beneath his bare feet. "Why are you all looking at me like that? What happened?" The overhead lumen flickered violently, casting jerking shadows across the hall. For a brief, impossible moment, Wren cast none, cold prickled beneath my armor. Before I could answer, a soft murmur filled the manufactorum, thin, warbling, like a Vox recording playing backward. It slithered through the rafters, threading between coils of dormant cabling. My squad stiffened, weapons tightening in their hands. "Sergeant?" Wren whispered again, voice trembling. "I feel wrong." The lumen strips flared, then died, plunging the hall into darkness thick enough to choke. My breath fogged in the sudden cold, each exhale short and sharp. The machinery groaned, metal shifting like bones settling in a grave. A cracked Vox panel along the wall stuttered to life on its own. Anomaly, designation, hollow, return confirmed. The words dissolved into static before any of us could react. Wren's breathing hitched. "Sergeant, why is it cold?" "I don't remember it being cold." "We need to move," I said, forcing steel into my voice, though my hands shook. "Stay where you are, Wren. Don't come any closer." "I don't understand," he whispered. "The last thing I remember, you were holding me. You said I'd be all right." Those were the last words he ever heard from me. The last lie I ever gave him. Now they returned to me in a voice that should have belonged to the dead. The lamps flickered back on with a violent burst, illuminating Wren once more. But the fear in my chest didn't ease, because whatever had come back wearing my brother-in-arm's face, it was not the man I buried. The manufactorum swallowed our footsteps as we guided Wren back toward the upper platforms, its metal corridors stretching like the veins of some forgotten machine god. Dim lumen strips flickered overhead, their light bending strangely whenever it touched him. The others kept their distance, glancing at him the way soldiers glance at unexploded ordnance, fearful, wary, unable to understand why it hasn't gone off yet. Wren stayed close to me, as if I were the only familiar thing in a world that had moved on without him. His movements were slow, unsteady, like he was learning how to inhabit his own body again. It hurt to watch. It hurt more to remember the weight of his corpse in my arms the day he died. We gathered in the assembly chamber, where broken servitors hung from rusted hooks. The air tasted of metal filings and incense long burnt into the walls. My squad formed a loose circle around Ren, weapons half lowered, caught between fear and loyalty. Vargas broke the silence first. "Sergeant, what in the throne's name is this? How is he was? Standing here?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. My eyes stayed fixed on Ren, cataloguing every detail. Same scar above his brow, same crooked nose he'd broken in training, same faint burn mark on his neck from a malfunctioning laspack. All familiar. All impossible. Ren swallowed hard. "Where is everyone? Our regiment? The ridge? Did we pull back?" Joran stepped back, face draining of color. "He doesn't know." Ren frowned, confused. "Know what? Why are you all looking at me like I've done something wrong?" "You died," Vargas whispered. "We buried you." Ren's eyes widened, hurt first, then fear. "That's not funny." "It's not a joke," I said quietly. His breath hitched. "Sergeant, I was with you." Then everything went dark. "And now?" He clutched his chest. "I can't feel my heartbeat. I should feel it. Shouldn't I?" Silence settled like dust. His hands shook as he pressed them against his sternum, searching for something that wasn't there. Panic flickered in his eyes, raw and childlike. "Sergeant, what's happening to me?" Before I could speak, a servo skull drifted near, its sensors humming. The moment it passed within a meter of Ren, its auspex flared red, then burst in a shower of sparks, clattering to the floor with a mechanical shriek. The air filled with the smell of burnt circuits. Everyone flinched except Ren, who froze like a man terrified of his own shadow. Joran muttered a prayer under his breath. Vargas stepped closer to him, voice cracking. "Ren, look at me. Do you remember anything after the ridge? Anything at all?" Ren shook his head. "Nothing, just darkness. And then, cold, like I was floating inside it." The lights overhead flickered twice, stuttering as though the machine spirits recoiled from his words. Then Ren looked at me, really looked, and his voice softened to a whisper. "Sergeant, am I alive?" Before I could answer, the chamber's Vox unit screeched to life. "Anomaly detected. No soul signature present. Initiate quarantine." My blood ran cold. Ren stepped back, shaking. "What does that mean?" "Sergeant, what does it mean?" I had no answer that wouldn't break him further. But the truth pressed against my mind like a blade. Ren had returned without a soul, a body animated by something beyond understanding, something the Imperium would never tolerate. I placed a hand gently on his shoulder. His flesh was cold, no warmth, no pulse. He looked up at me with terrified eyes, searching for hope. "Sergeant," he whispered, "you said I'd be all right." The lie echoed again between us, as cold as the Manufactorum walls. And for the first time since his return, I realized he wasn't afraid of dying again. He was afraid of what he had become. Ren's presence changed the Manufactorum. At first it happened in small ways, lights dimming as he passed, cogitators humming with broken patterns, servo arms twitching as though sensing something they could not name. But soon the disturbances grew sharper, heavier, impossible to ignore. By the time we moved him to the central assembly floor, the entire complex felt awake. The air thickened with the scent of ozone and burnt incense. Dust motes drifted like falling ash through the flicker of lumen strips that couldn't decide whether to burn or die. Somewhere deep in the structure, machines that hadn't moved in decades groaned to life, belts shifting minutely before falling still. The metal beneath our boots thrummed with a faint, unsettling resonance like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Ren stood in the middle of the chamber, arms wrapped around himself as if trying to hold his body together. "I feel strange," he murmured. "Like something is pulling at me. Like I'm not fully here." None of us answered. A Mechanicus Psyker assigned to our patrol finally arrived, thin, hooded, wrapped in copper, cabling, and incense coils. His mechadendrites clicked softly as he approached Ren, Auspex nodes glowing amber beneath the hood. The others backed away. I stayed beside Ren, though the cold radiating off him sank deeper into my bones with every breath. "Stand still," the Psyker croaked. "We will determine the integrity of your spirit form." The Auspex nodes brightened, the air hummed, then the Psyker screamed. His hood snapped back as blood burst from his eyes and nose, skin blistering as if scalded. He staggered, clawing at his own skull, gasping a single, ruptured word, EMPTY. He collapsed before finishing it. Ren fell to his knees, stunned. "What did I do? Sergeant, what did I do?" "Nothing," I whispered, though my voice shook with doubt. The chamber lights flickered violently, then stayed on, humming with low static like the manufactorum itself was irritated. Shadows twisted in unnatural ways, stretching toward Ren before recoiling like frightened animals. From the darkness above, a disused vox horn crackled. Hollow, anomaly, containment required. Joran swore and crossed himself. Vargas raised his rifle, teeth clenched. Ren clutched my arm. "Sergeant, am I dying again?" His skin felt colder now, almost frostbitten. His breath formed no vapor. His heartbeat, if it still existed, was too faint to sense even through physical contact. "Ren," I said, forcing my voice steady, "look at me." He did, and I wished he hadn't. The fear in his eyes was raw, no madness, no corruption. Just a young man who once trusted me with every part of his life, now desperate for reassurance. "I need to know," he whispered. "Did something follow me back?" Before I could answer, the world tilted. A harsh, metallic scream tore through the manufactorum as every lumen burst at once, plunging us into near-total darkness. My head throbbed. The ground vibrated. The cold spread across the floor like creeping frost. And then the vision hit. Not a dream, not a hallucination. A tear in reality widening behind my eyes. I stood once more on the battlefield where Ren died, mud-soaked with blood, artillery flashing in the sky like dying stars. But the world was silent, frozen. Ren's corpse lay at my feet. His eyes stared at nothing. Then something unseen dragged his soul upward, a distortion in the air, a void that swallowed light. He reached for me, wordless, terrified, before dissolving into shadow. In the center of that darkness stood a figure tall, cloaked in dim golden light, features human, too human. A voice whispered, "The warp returns what faith rejects." My vision snapped back as quickly as it came. I hit the metal floor hard, gasping. The lights returned in a slow, sickly glow. Ren hovered over me, shaking. "Sergeant, what's happening to me? What am I becoming?" Before I could speak, boots thundered in the corridor. An inquisitorial commissar stepped into the chamber, cloak trailing behind him, rosette glinting with cold authority. His eyes swept over the ruined lights, the bleeding Psyker, the trembling anomaly crouched beside me. "Sergeant," he said, voice sharp as a blade's edge, "you will report to me immediately," Vargas muttered. "Throne, help us." The commissar didn't look at the squad. He looked only at Ren. And in that gaze, I saw the truth. He already knew what Ren was, and he had come to decide what must be done. I followed the commissar through the manufactorum's skeletal corridors, Ren trailing behind like a frightened shadow. The air tasted of old incense and burnt dust, stirred by the rhythmic clank of the commissar's boots. Every lumen flickered as he passed, bowing dimly as if in reverence or dread. I wasn't sure which. We entered a side chamber that once housed calibration servitors. Their empty brackets hung like broken limbs from the walls. The ruined Psyker's body had been dragged aside with little ceremony, his blood still drying in a thin, dark smear across the floor. The metallic scent mixed with the colder, sharper smell radiating from Ren, a scent that had no place among the living. The commissar turned toward us, his expression carved in stern resolve. His coat settled around him like the wings of a carrion bird. "Sergeant," he said, "identify the anomaly." Ren flinched at the word. I placed myself half a step forward, instinct overriding judgment. "Corporal Ren, 2nd Platoon, killed in action on Varnhold Ridge." "Killed," the commissar repeated, tone flat, and yet standing. Ren swallowed. "Sir, I don't know how. I don't remember anything after I died. The commissar studied him with the sharp intensity of a man assessing a malfunctioning weapon. You have no heartbeat, no respiration, no shadow, and no soul. Ren recoiled as if struck. No, that can't be. The commissar ignored him, his eyes fixed on me. Sergeant, what you see before you is a hollow return, a body reanimated without its animus, a breach waiting to widen. I clenched my jaw. He's not corrupted. Not yet, he corrected. But something touched him in death, something the Imperium cannot tolerate. Ren looked to me for reassurance. I had none to offer. The commissar produced a data slate, its surface flickering with sigils of forbidden protocols. Such beings attract warp entities. They distort machine spirits. Their existence alone destabilizes faith. Vargas and Joran stood in the doorway, gripping their rifles as though the truth itself were something to shoot. Ren's voice broke. Sergeant, please, tell him I'm still me. His hand reached toward me. I did not step back, but I could not meet his eyes. The commissar continued, voice as cold as the manufactorum floor. This complex is already reacting. The air shifts around him, machinery awakens, a psyker is dead. Ignoring this is not an option. Ren shook his head violently. I didn't want any of this. I didn't ask to come back. The lights flickered overhead in response, shadows dancing in angles that defied reason. A faint, distant rumble traveled through the metal like a beast turning in its sleep. The commissar moved closer, lowering his voice. Tell me, Corporal, when you died, what did you see? Ren tensed, trembling. Nothing. Darkness. Cold. And a voice. A human voice. It wasn't. He cut himself off abruptly, as though afraid to speak the rest. What did it say? The commissar pressed. Ren's lips parted, then closed again. I don't remember. The commissar's eyes narrowed. You will. He turned to me again. Your orders remain unchanged. Keep him contained until dawn. I felt a spike of dread. And after dawn, the commissar's expression didn't change. You will execute him. Ren gasped as if stabbed. Sergeant? The commissar stepped past us toward the exit. If you fail, the Inquisition will purge this entire manufactorum and everyone inside it. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of failing lumens. Ren's voice came fragile, shivering. Sergeant, am I doomed? I looked at him, this man I had once carried through mud and blood, this brother I thought I had laid to rest standing before me like a memory wearing flesh. I don't know, I whispered. But the truth was already forming in the cold air between us. He was not alive, he was not dead, and something in the warp wanted him back. Ren sat on a crate beside the dormant conveyor lines, head bowed, hands trembling in his lap. The manufactorum felt colder around him, as if the air itself recoiled from his presence. My squad kept their distance, speaking in whispers, their breaths fogging faintly even though the temperature hadn't dropped. The machine spirits hummed uneasily, vibrations skittering through the walls like insects trapped beneath metal. I approached him slowly. Ren. He looked up. His eyes were the same pale green I remembered, yet empty in a way that gnawed at the edges of my thoughts. No spark, no warmth, no soul light behind them. Sergeant, he said softly, what did he mean? A hollow return? His voice cracked on the last words. I exhaled through clenched teeth. It's a Mechanicus term. It means something came back without what makes a man whole. He swallowed, gaze dropping. So I'm wrong. You're not wrong. The lie burned immediately. You're just changed. Changed, he repeated quietly, tasting the word as if it were poison. A loose cable above him sparked suddenly, snapping with an electric hiss. Ren jolted, clutching his chest. The others raised their weapons instinctively until I motioned them down. The manufactorum responded again, gears shifting somewhere deep below us, machinery stirring as if in restless sleep. Ren hugged his arms around himself. It's like the air pushes against me, like the world knows I'm not supposed to be here. "Do you remember anything after Varnhold?" I asked. He shook his head. "Only darkness. And cold. A deep cold that wasn't empty. It felt like something was watching from underneath it." He hesitated, then added, "And a voice. One I can't forget." I knelt beside him. "Whose voice?" His breathing grew shallow. "I don't know. But it didn't sound monstrous. It sounded human. Like someone standing beside me. Like someone disappointed." The words settled over us like ash. "What did it say?" I pressed gently. Ren closed his eyes, struggling. "Only one thing. Over and over. I didn't understand it then. I still don't." "What did it say, Ren?" His voice became a whisper. "Faith blinds the living more than death does." A chill crawled through my spine. Before I could speak, a ripple of distortion washed across the room. The lumen strips along the walls dimmed in succession, as if something unseen walked beneath them. A low thrumming rose through the metal, vibrating the bolts in the floor. Loose dust rained from the overhead gantries. Ren clutched his head with both hands. "Stop. Please stop." They're whispering again. "Who?" I asked, tightening my grip on his shoulder. He shook uncontrollably. "Voices, like echoes, calling from behind the walls. They want me to remember. They want me back." A mutated servo arm dangling above us jerked violently, screeching against its rusted hinge. My squad scrambled backward. The arm reached toward Ren before freezing mid-swivel, as if grabbed by an invisible force. Every lumen in the chamber surged, once an angry, blinding flare, then dimmed to a trembling glow. Ren exhaled shakily, lowering his hands. "Sergeant." Something followed me. "I can feel it." I didn't speak. Couldn't, because I felt it too. A presence, lingering at the edge of perception, brushing against the back of my skull like a cold fingertip. Not a daemon, not a warp ghost. Something quieter, patient, watching. Ren's voice broke the silence again, small, fragile. "Why did it bring me back?" Before I could answer, the Vox unit along the far wall crackled with sudden life. Static rolled through the chamber, then resolved into a warped recording. Anomaly. Proximity breach. Further exposure risks doctrinal collapse. Collapse. The word echoed far too loudly in that cold hall. Ren stared at the Vox, trembling. "Sergeant, they're going to kill me, aren't they?" His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't pleading. It was resigned. I sat beside him on the cold metal floor, the weight of command settling on me like a throne of iron. I had no right to offer comfort, no power to promise safety. But I owed him truth, something he hadn't been given since the moment he first died. "I don't know what they'll do," I said quietly. "But whatever happens, I won't let you face it alone." He swallowed hard, eyes glistening with a fear that cut deeper than any battlefield terror. "I came back for something, Sergeant. I just don't know what it is." The Manufactorum lights flickered again, as if disagreeing. Outside, distant footsteps echoed, heavy, precise, inquisitorial. Dawn was approaching, and with it, the deadline. The Commissar summoned me to the upper command floor just after the 3rd hour, his voice echoing through the Manufactorum's Vox network with clipped precision. "Sergeant, report." Alone. The word alone lingered longer than the machine spirits intended, warped slightly by the faulty speakers. Or perhaps by Ren's presence. I didn't know anymore. Ren watched me leave, his gaze heavy with fear he tried to hide. "Sergeant, will you come back?" "I will," I said. It was the closest thing to truth I could offer. The stairwell groaned beneath my boots as I ascended. The Manufactorum seemed to resent each step, metal shifting in slow protest. Sometimes I thought I heard breath in the walls, or murmurs in the pipes, subtle, almost shy, as though whatever dwelled there was learning how to speak. The command room door was half open, lumens flickering weakly inside. I stepped in and found the Commissar standing beside the central cogitator, its cracked screen sputtering with shifting red sigils. He didn't look up. "Close the door." I obeyed. The latch clicked shut like a sentence being passed. The commissar turned, hands clasped behind his back. "Your man is unstable." "He's scared," I said. "He is soulless," the commissar corrected, voice cold enough to frost metal. "A hollow return is a danger beyond your comprehension. A conduit, a lure, an open wound in the fabric of humanity." My jaw tightened. "He is still my corporal." "He is not your corporal," the commissar said sharply. "Your corporal is dead, buried, recorded, purified." He stepped closer, his coat whispering against the floor. "What stands below us is a shell animated by warp interference, carrying remnants of a forbidden memory." My pulse spiked. "Memory?" The commissar studied me, as if waiting to see if I already knew. "When one dies, the soul leaves the body. But something prevented this one's passage. Something held him, something dredged him back." I forced my voice steady. "Why?" The commissar turned to the cogitator, inputting a string of coded runes. A shuttered lumen flickered, revealing a small hololith projection, grainy, incomplete, showing a battlefield swallowed in smoke. This was extracted from residual warp echoes around the anomaly. He gestured toward the image. "Watch." The hololith shimmered. The smoke parted. And there, barely visible, was the outline of a towering figure wreathed in muted gold, human, not divine. A presence without radiance. A leader, not a god. My breath caught. The commissar didn't look at me. He saw too much in the moment of death, something the Imperium cannot allow to exist. I spoke before I could stop myself. "The Emperor as a man." The commissar cut me off quietly. Too quietly. "Finish that sentence, Sergeant, and I will purge this room." Silence hung between us like a noose. The commissar continued. "If the anomaly speaks, if his memory spreads, doctrines fracture, faith collapses, worlds burn. What do you want from me?" I asked. "Obedience." He stepped forward, placing a sanctified las pistol on the table between us. Its metal gleamed faintly in the failing light. "At dawn, you will destroy the anomaly." The word destroy, not kill, settled like a stone in my gut. "And if I refuse?" I asked. The commissar's eyes hardened. "Then every man under your command dies, and you die last." Cold crept through me, settling in my bones. He leaned in just enough for the lumen's tremor to catch the edge of his gaze. "This is not punishment, it is preservation. A single hollow echo cannot be allowed to unravel the Emperor's design." I swallowed, throat raw. "He's not dangerous." The commissar's voice softened in a way more terrifying than a shout. "He already is, Sergeant. You just haven't accepted it." The cogitator flickered again with distorted audio, faint, glitching, warped. "Faith is a weapon misused," Ren's voice. A chill tightened around my spine like a hand. The commissar sealed the hololith. "At dawn," he repeated. "You end this." I turned to leave. "Sergeant," he added without looking back, "what you feel for that corpse is irrelevant. Duty is not mercy." I walked out with the pistol heavy in my hand, the manufactorum humming around me like a beast waking in the dark. Ren's silhouette waited below, shoulders hunched, hope flickering faintly in his eyes as he saw me return, hope I knew I might have to kill. Ren sat alone beneath the skeletal frame of an unfinished assembly rig, his back against a pillar of cold metal. The lumen above him flickered unevenly, unable to cast a steady light on his form. It wasn't just the failing power grid, there was something in the air around him that made illumination hesitate, as if the machine spirits feared touching whatever he had become. I approached quietly. My boots echoed through the empty manufactorum, each step ringing like a slow countdown. Ren lifted his head when he heard me, offering a weak attempt at a smile. It faltered almost instantly. "You were gone a long time," he murmured. "I had to speak with the commissar," I said, keeping my tone steady. "They're trying to understand what happened to you." He looked down at his hands, turning them over as if seeing them for the first time. "Understand? What I am, you mean?" I didn't answer. Not with words. A draft drifted through the chamber, carrying the faint scent of machine oil and cold metal. Ren shivered. Not from temperature. I had begun to suspect he felt none, but from something deeper, a tremor born of dread. "I used to pray," he said suddenly. "Back on Varnhold, you remember? Every night before we rotated out, I'd whisper a quick thanks to the Emperor. Thought it mattered." A hollow laugh escaped him. "Now I can't even feel my own heartbeat. Hard to believe the Emperor listens to something that doesn't have a soul." I tightened my jaw. "Don't talk like that." He looked up, eyes searching mine. "Why not? It's true, isn't it? I'm wrong. I'm unfinished. Ren, I shouldn't have come back," he whispered. "Whatever dragged me out of death, it wasn't mercy." The words echoed through the empty hall, swallowed by steel and silence. I sat beside him, the cold of his presence seeping through my armor. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the darkened floor as though searching for an answer buried in the grime. "Sergeant, I remember something," he said quietly. "It comes in flashes, like lightning behind my eyes, a battlefield, the moment I died, but there's something else, something standing at the edge of it." The pressure in my chest tightened. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I see a figure, tall, wrapped in gold, but it's not divine, not like the saints in the murals. This one looks tired." He swallowed. "Human." My breath stilled. "He stood beside my body," Ren continued, voice trembling, "and he said something to me. Whispered it, like he didn't want anyone else to hear." "What did he say?" My voice came out low, almost a growl. Ren shook his head. I don't know. It's like the memory is trapped behind a wall. Every time I get close to it, I feel something pulling me back. Like claws, like teeth." A shudder ran through him, rippling unnaturally beneath his skin. "Sergeant," he whispered, "what if I wasn't meant to return? What if something else wanted me to?" A distant thrum vibrated through the manufactorum, as though the building itself reacted to his words. Tools rattled on the floor. A cluster of dormant servitors jerked once, their eyes flickering to brief, glitching life. Ren flinched. "I don't know what I am anymore." I wanted to tell him he was still my corporal, still the man I had carried through mud and blood, but the truth weighed too heavily on my tongue. Instead, I asked softly, "What do you feel?" He looked at me with eyes full of dread, like I'm being watched. "Not by you, not by them." He tilted his head toward the distant footsteps of my squad. "By something standing just beyond the edge of the world, waiting for me to slip back." The manufactorum lights dimmed again, shadows stretching unnaturally long around him. He lifted a shaking hand, staring at it as though it were no longer his. "Sergeant, please tell me I'm still me." His voice cracked on the last word. And for the first time since his return, I saw a single tear roll down his face, cold as glass, leaving no warmth, no life, no trace of humanity behind. I placed a hand on his shoulder, feeling the hollow chill beneath his skin. "You're still Ren," I said. But in that moment, I wasn't sure if I was trying to comfort him or convince myself. The manufactorum seemed to breathe around us as night settled deeper into its iron bones, not with life, but with pressure, an invisible weight pushing outward from Ren as though reality strained to hold his shape. I could feel it each time I walked near him, a subtle thinning in the air, like stepping too close to a cliff edge you cannot see. The others felt it too. They tried not to stare, but their eyes always drifted back to him with the silent dread of soldiers who know their rifles won't help. Joran finally broke and approached me while I checked the perimeter seals. "Sergeant," he whispered, "we shouldn't be near him. The air sings around him, like warp burn but colder." I ignored the tremor in his voice. "He's still one of ours." Joran shook his head. "He was." When he walked away, I felt the truth of that word settling behind my ribs like a nail. I found Ren alone again, seated beside a pile of rusted chain links beneath a half-collapsed servo-locking rig. The lumens nearby sputtered every few seconds, throwing him in and out of shadow. Except it wasn't shadow. He didn't cast one. The light simply avoided him. Ren lifted his head as I approached. "They're afraid of me," he murmured. "They're afraid of what they don't understand." He stared at his hands. "Do you understand me?" The question cut deeper than I expected. I sat beside him, the cold radiating off his form sinking through my armor. "I'm trying." He nodded, weakly, then winced, pressing a hand to his temple. "It's happening again." "What is?" "The pulling. It feels like something claws at the edge of my mind, like it wants me to remember or forget. I can't tell which." A sharp, metallic whine pierced the air. The rig above us shuddered, servo arms twitching awake with screeching joints. Sparks rained down as if shaken loose by an unseen storm. Ren curled forward, clutching his head as a low hum built beneath the floor. Then his voice changed, not in tone but in depth, as if two versions of him spoke at once, layered imperfectly. "Sergeant, make it stop." I held his shoulder. "Focus on my voice. Stay with me." The manufactorum responded with a violent shudder. A conveyor belt lurched half a meter before slamming back into place. Broken tools clattered across the floor. Lumen strips strobed wildly. Ren gasped and slammed a fist into the steel floor. "Why am I here? Why did it drag me back?" Then he froze. The air stilled, and for a heartbeat, every lumen held steady. Ren's pupils widened in sudden clarity. I remember something. My grip tightened. "Tell me." He lifted his gaze slowly, as if afraid something else might be watching. "When I died, the world went silent. Then, there was a voice. Not cruel, not kind, just tired." My breath hitched. "What did it say?" Ren swallowed. "It told me I wasn't supposed to worship. That none of us were. That faith was a cage we built around a man who never asked for it." The back of my neck prickled. "Those words could kill you again." Ren shook his head. "I didn't understand them then. I don't now. But something else was there. Something behind the voice." "What?" His answer came as a whisper. "Darkness. Not empty. Listening." The manufactorum groaned as if in agreement. A heavy chain snapped overhead, crashing to the floor behind us. My squad came running, weapons raised, fear etched into their faces. Ren exhaled shakily. "Sergeant, if I'm a doorway to something, you have to tell me." I stared at him, the man I once dug a grave for, now sitting in front of me like an echo wearing flesh. The cold around him intensified, frosting lightly along the metal at his feet. A man without a soul. A man touched by something that remembered him. A man carrying a truth the Imperium would kill worlds to bury. "I don't know what you are," I whispered finally. "But I know you're not my enemy." Ren closed his eyes. "Then why does it feel like everything else is?" The manufactorum fell into an uneasy stillness as the hour crawled toward false dawn, the kind of stillness that settles over a battlefield just before artillery begins its hymn. My squad huddled near the central assembly pit, whispering prayers that sounded more like apologies. Ren stood apart from them, arms wrapped around himself as though holding his body together through will alone. I watched him from the upper walkway, gripping the railing so tightly that metal creaked under my gauntlets. Every lumen flicker, every shifting shadow, every tremor in the structure dragged my attention back to him. He was the epicenter of something unnatural, something the Imperium feared more than any daemon: contradiction. Ren looked up at me, his expression soft with despair. "Sergeant, I'm trying to stay calm, but something's coming closer. I can feel it." I descended the steel steps and approached him. My footsteps echoed sharply, bouncing from one rusted wall to another. "What do you feel exactly?" He inhaled, though he didn't need to. Pressure, like someone pressing a hand against the back of my skull. He hesitated. "Sometimes I think it's guiding me. Other times I think it wants to drag me back into the dark." Vargas approached warily, lasgun trembling in his hands. "Sergeant, he's glowing." I turned sharply. Ren's skin wasn't glowing, not exactly. But faint motes of pale light drifted off him like dust caught in a dying lumen beam, tiny, shimmering flecks that rose into the air before dissolving. My stomach twisted. Ren stared at his hands in horror. "Sergeant, what's happening?" Before I could answer, the Manufactorum shuddered. Not violently, not like machinery stirring. No, like something outside reality leaned against the walls, testing their strength. The lumens went dark. The hum of dormant engines went silent. Even the air seemed to pause. A low, distant tone rose from deep beneath the floors, a deep metallic groan that reminded me of a ship hull compressing under pressure. The sound vibrated through my chest, rattling bones that had survived a dozen campaigns. Ren gasped, "It's here." I grabbed his shoulders. "What is?" He stared past me, eyes widening as though watching something step from the darkness. The thing that held me, the thing that whispered, "It knows I'm remembering." The shadows along the far wall twisted, stretching outward in impossible angles. The darkness thickened around Ren, gathering like a storm cloud. My squad staggered back, crossing themselves, repeating broken prayers. Jorin whispered, "By the throne, what's happening to him?" Ren collapsed to his knees, clutching his head. "Make it stop, please, make it stop." Then the vision hit me. Not mine, his. My mind was torn open to a moment buried in death's grasp. I stood on Varnhold Ridge again. Smoke curled across the trenches. Artillery lit the sky like lightning trapped in a cage. Ren's corpse lay at my feet, eyes open, body cooling. But something else was there. A figure walked through the smoke, tall, human, wrapped in muted golden light, not radiant, not divine, just weary. The Emperor, not as a god, as a man. He knelt beside Ren's corpse and whispered something I could not fully hear, words too fragile for mortal understanding. Then a shadow rose behind him, swallowing light, swallowing meaning, swallowing Ren's departing soul like a gentle hand pulling him backward. My vision snapped. I fell to the floor, gasping. Ren knelt before me, trembling. "Sergeant, I didn't choose to come back. It forced me." That voice, it wasn't his. It was something watching him. The lumens flickered violently, bathing the room in frantic strobing light. Then a voice crackled through the Manufactorum's Vox network, cold, mechanical, unmistakable. "Sergeant, bring the anomaly to the execution floor. Do not delay." The Commissar. My squad looked at me, terror etched into every line of their faces. Ren whispered, "Sergeant, are they going to kill me?" I met his eyes. "I don't know if they can." Dawn did not rise in the Manufactorum. Light did not seep through cracked windows or broken vents. Instead, a thin, colorless glow bled slowly into the metal bones of the structure, as if the world outside refused to acknowledge morning but felt obligated to imitate it. The hour had come, the execution hour. Ren followed me through the assembly hall with slow, uncertain steps, his bare feet making almost no sound on the steel. My squad walked behind us, rifles lowered but ready, fear gripping their movements. No one spoke. The Manufactorum groaned quietly above us, as though listening. Ren's voice broke the silence, first small, trembling. "Sergeant, if this is some sort of trial, I can prove I'm still me." I kept my eyes forward. "This isn't a trial." He swallowed. "Then what is it?" I had no answer he deserved. We crossed into the old elevator shaft where rusted chains hung like skeletal vines. The lights flickered once, dimming around Ren as they always did, retreating from the cold that clung to him like a second skin. When the elevator platform groaned and descended, the sound reminded me of a coffin lid being lowered. Ren stood close to me, his voice barely audible. "You said you wouldn't let me face this alone." "I'm here," I said. It wasn't enough. The lower level opened into the Manufactorum's central processing chamber, an enormous hall of conveyor lines, broken lifts, and dormant furnaces. The Commissar waited at the far end, flanked by two stormtroopers whose helmets reflected distorted lumens like empty eyes. He raised one hand. "Stop there." We obeyed. Ren whispered, "Sergeant, what do I do?" "Stay behind me." The Commissar stepped forward, his coat trailing like a shadow. "Corporal Ren," he said, voice echoing off metal. By decree of the Ordo Astra Obscurus, you are classified as a hollow return, a threat to doctrinal stability, and an active warp breach. Ren shook his head violently. I'm not a breach. I didn't choose any of this. The Commissar ignored him. You carry memories that do not belong to the living. You are a vessel for something unseen. You destabilize the veil. You are already dead. Ren looked to me desperately. Sergeant, tell him I'm not dangerous. Please. My chest tightened. He's not a threat. The Commissar's eyes flicked to me a brief, sharp, chilling glare. Your loyalty blinds you. He nodded to the stormtroopers. They raised their rifles. Ren flinched back, hands raised in instinctive, pointless defense. Please wait. A surge of cold radiated from him, spreading across the floor like a fog. The metal beneath our boots frosted instantly. The lumens flickered wildly, some bursting in showers of sparks. The stormtroopers stiffened but held their aim. Ren fell to his knees. Sergeant, help me, something's pulling. I rushed to him, grabbing his shoulders. His skin felt like carved stone, impossibly cold. His eyes rolled in panic, but behind the fear was something else. Some awareness awakening inside him, something vast, ancient, and wrong. The Commissar's voice cut through the chaos. Do not touch him. I tightened my grip. He's still my man. He is an open wound in reality, the Commissar shouted. Let him go. But Ren's fingers grabbed my arm with sudden desperation. Sergeant, I remember now what the voice said when I died. The world froze. What did it say? I whispered. Ren's voice trembled. It said faith wasn't meant for worship. It said we made the Emperor into something he never wanted to be. The stormtroopers raised their rifles higher. The Commissar snapped. Silence him. Ren stared at me with wide, terrified eyes. I didn't want to know. I didn't want any of this. Please don't let them take me again. I pulled him to his feet. The Commissar leveled his own weapon. Sergeant, step away, now. For the first time since his return, Ren looked at me not with fear but with trust. Trust I knew I could not protect. The stormtroopers advanced. The Commissar lifted his pistol, and I realized the moment I had feared since the night he walked out of death. I was about to betray my brother all over again. The stormtroopers closed in with the slow, merciless certainty of executioners, their footfalls thudding in perfect rhythm against the metal floor. Ren clung to me as though I were the only thing anchoring him to this world. His fingers dug into my sleeve, ice cold, trembling, desperate. I could feel the fear radiating from him as clearly as breath, though he had none. The Commissar raised his hand, and the stormtroopers halted. The silence that followed felt heavier than any battlefield I had known. Sergeant, the Commissar said, voice low but carrying, you will step aside. Ren pressed closer to me, shaking. Please, don't leave me. His words carved into me like a blade. I remembered the trench where he died, the way he had gripped my arm while the world burned around us. He had trusted me then too, trusted me to get him home, and I failed him once already. The Commissar's gaze hardened. He is not your responsibility. He is not even a man. What stands beside you is a warp-touched construct wearing the shape of a corpse. Ren's breath hitched, though it made no sound. His eyes filled with an agony I had no words for. Sergeant, I'm still me. I know I am. I looked at him, at his familiar face twisted with fear, at the pale glow pulsing faintly beneath his skin, at the shadows that refused to cling to him. He was Ren, and he wasn't. Both truths lived inside him like warring spirits. The Commissar stepped forward. If you do not comply, Sergeant, I will execute you both. I tightened my grip on Ren's shoulder. My squad watched from behind, frozen between loyalty and horror. Vargas's eyes glistened. Jorin whispered a prayer I could barely hear. Ren turned to me, voice breaking. Sergeant, I remember everything now. The room seemed to tilt. He swallowed. When I died, I saw him, the Emperor. But he wasn't a god. His voice cracked. He looked tired, human. like someone who carried the weight of 1,000 worlds and expected no worship for it. The commissar snapped his fingers. "Silence him." Ren's voice grew louder, desperate. He said something to me. Just one thing before the dark took me. The commissar leveled his pistol. "This ends now." "What did he say?" I whispered. Ren met my gaze with a mixture of terror and clarity. He said faith is a weapon, and we misused it. The words struck the manufactorum like a physical blow. The lights flickered violently. Metal groaned as though the entire structure protested the truth. A blast of cold burst outward from Ren, forcing everyone back a step except me. The stormtroopers staggered, rifles wavering. The commissar steadied himself against a support beam, eyes burning with fury. "You see, blasphemy lives inside his tongue. That thing speaks with the warp's intent." Ren shook his head furiously. "I'm not corrupted, I'm scared." I faced him fully now. "What do you want me to do?" Ren's expression twisted into something raw: fear, hope, love, despair. "I want to live," he whispered. "I shouldn't be here, I know that. But please, please don't let them kill me again." The plea shattered something inside me. The commissar raised his weapon. "Last chance, Sergeant. Step aside." I didn't move. The commissar exhaled sharply. "Very well." He dropped his hand. The stormtroopers fired. Instinct took over. I slammed Ren to the ground and threw myself over him as last bolts sizzled through the air. The shots struck the wall behind us, melting metal and filling the chamber with a choking haze. Ren cried out, not in pain, but in terror. The commissar shouted, "Contain them! Do not let the anomaly escape!" Las fire thundered through the room. Sparks cascaded from overhead rails. Machinery stirred in confused, shuddering spasms. My squad scrambled for cover, torn between orders and conscience. Ren clutched me like a drowning man. "Sergeant, don't let them take me. Don't let me die again." I held him close as the storm closed around us. I had crossed the line. There was no going back. The manufactorum erupted into chaos, ricocheting las fire, carving glowing scars across steel, sparks raining from ruptured conduits, the air filling with the metallic tang of ionized dust. Ren clung to me, trembling violently, every breathless sob shaking through his cold frame. The stormtroopers advanced in a disciplined arc, rifles raised, each footstep precise and merciless. "Sergeant," Vargas shouted over the gunfire. "What are your orders?" I had no orders, only instinct, only loyalty twisted into something painful and doomed. I pulled Ren behind a rusted storage container as bolts hammered its side. The metal glowed red where shots struck. Ren pressed both hands against his head, shaking uncontrollably. "They can't take me, Sergeant, they can't. I won't let them," I said, though I no longer knew if it was possible. The commissar's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "Stand down, Sergeant. You cannot protect a heretical aberration." I fired a warning shot in his direction, not to hit him, but to force him to take cover. The last bolt seared past his coat, hissing against a fallen servo arm. He ducked behind a support pillar, cloak whipping. "Defying me will condemn your entire regiment," he roared. "My regiment is already condemned," I muttered through clenched teeth. Ren curled closer to me, cold radiating through his shaking body. "Sergeant, something's opening." I froze. "What do you mean?" He pointed a trembling hand toward the assembly floor. A darkened patch of air hovered there, subtle at first, then pulsing. Shadows converged unnaturally, not cast by light but drawn inward, spiraling into a single point. The metal beneath it creaked and bowed, as if gravity itself bent wrong. A warp fissure, small but growing. The stormtroopers saw it too. One faltered mid-step. "Commissar." "Breach manifestation." The commissar's reply was immediate. "Contain the anomaly. Kill the source." Ren gasped, clutching the collar of my fatigues. "Sergeant, it's tied to me. If I lose control, if I panic, it widens." I swallowed hard. "Ren, listen to me. You need to stay grounded. Focus on my voice." His eyes glistened with terror. "I don't know if I can." A stormtrooper broke formation and charged us. I fired, striking him square in the chest. He fell, armor sparking. Another took his place instantly, stepping over the body without hesitation. Ren flinched. "They won't stop." "No," I said. "They won't." The warp fissure pulsed again, growing brighter, a sickly glow leaking into the air like infection spreading through water. My squad backed away, murmuring frantic prayers. Vargas shouted, "Sergeant, that thing opens any further and we're finished." The commissar surged from cover, fury etched across his face. "You see now, Sergeant, this creature tears reality simply by existing. Kill him, or we all fall." Ren's grip tightened painfully. "Please, don't let them take me back into that darkness." The darkness, the shadow that had swallowed his soul the first time he died. I raised my pistol, his eyes widened. "Sergeant, not fear, not betrayal, just heartbreak, and trust, always trust." A tremor racked him, stronger than before. The fissure flared bright, warping the air with ripples of wrongness. The commissar fired wildly, bolts streaking toward us. I shielded Ren with my body and fired back, forcing him to dive behind a crate. He shouted something I couldn't hear over the gunfire, but it didn't matter. The choice was already made for me. Ren knelt in front of me, shaking, face streaked with cold tears he should not have been able to form. "Sergeant," he whispered, "I came back because I trusted you, because I remembered your voice when everything else went dark." I raised the pistol slowly. He closed his eyes. "I'm scared," he breathed. My hand trembled. I pulled the trigger. The room erupted into searing light as Ren's body dissolved not into blood, not into matter, but into drifting particles of pale dust that shimmered like dying embers. The warp fissure shrieked like metal being torn apart, then collapsed into nothing. Silence fell, absolute, crushing, irreversible. The commissar stepped forward, lowering his weapon. "It is done." I stared at the fading motes where Ren had knelt moments before. Done. The word tasted like ash. After the execution, the manufactorum felt hollow, emptier than before, as if Ren's absence had carved something out of the very air. The lumens steadied, the humming of distant machinery quieted. The strange distortions in shadow and sound faded away. The structure seemed relieved, as though it had been holding its breath until the moment his dust scattered across its floor. But I could not breathe. My squad dispersed in silence, each man retreating into corners of the chamber or collapsing against rusted machinery. No victory cry, no report, no ritual chant. Just the soft, broken sound of soldiers realizing they had survived something they could never speak of. The commissar approached slowly, his boots echoing with a kind of reverence. "The anomaly has been neutralized," he said. "The threat to reality is ended." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My gaze remained fixed on the pale dust settling into the cracks of the metal floor. "I understand your attachment," he continued, "but sentiment has no place in our duty. You acted within the Emperor's will." I lifted my head, meeting his cold, sharp gaze. "Did I?" He paused. "Yes." But his voice wavered, not in doubt, but in discomfort. He wasn't used to being questioned. He glanced down at the dust. His existence contradicted the foundation of Imperial doctrine. "It is better this way." "Better? For who?" Vargas approached, face pale. "Sergeant, what do we do now?" "Clean up," the commissar answered before I could speak. "No trace remains, no record, no mention in any report. The body will be listed as buried with honors on Varnhold Ridge, as originally recorded." He looked at me once more. "And you, Sergeant, you will never speak of this again. To anyone, ever." He left with the stormtroopers, coat brushing the dust of the man I had killed. My squad watched him go, none daring to speak until he was gone. Joran's voice cracked. "Sergeant, did we do the right thing?" The question stabbed deeper than any blade. I walked away without answering, boots crunching faintly over the remains of my friend. Each step sank a little into the powder, leaving soft impressions that blurred behind me, like fading memories. I found a quiet alcove near a rusted gantry overlooking the main hall. The Manufactorum stretched out below me, silent, still, dead. But it no longer felt abandoned. It felt witness, as though it had tasted something forbidden and now waited for the next tragedy to echo within its walls. I removed my helmet, letting the cold air brush against my skin. The metallic scent stung my throat. Ren's final moments replayed behind my eyes, his trembling, his trust, his last whisper, "I'm scared." I had heard those words once before on the battlefield, when his life slipped between my fingers as easily as the dust I had scattered moments ago. But this time, I was the one who took his life. I leaned my head against the railing and exhaled slowly, breath fogging the cold air. It reminded me of his breathless mouth, moving, speaking, living without ever inhaling. Vargas approached quietly. "Sergeant, if you need anything, I need nothing." He hesitated. "We're all shaken. He was one of us." I closed my eyes. He was more than that. Silence stretched between us. Finally, Vargas whispered, "What did he see, Sergeant, when he died?" I opened my eyes slowly. "Something the Imperium cannot allow to exist." He swallowed hard. "Are we in danger for knowing that?" I shook my head. "You know nothing." He nodded, though fear lingered in his eyes. "Understood." He left me alone. I didn't move for a long time. The Manufactorum around me creaked softly, its vast skeleton settling as though easing into a long sleep. The dawn outside pushed a faint glow through the broken vents, turning the dust at my feet into a muted, shimmering path. But I did not follow it. Instead, I whispered into the cold, "I'm sorry, Ren." And the silence answered with nothing at all. I made my way to one of the upper workrooms, an isolated chamber with shattered cogitator racks, and a single lumen flickering like a dying star. It was the only place in the Manufactorum where I couldn't hear the others mourning in silence. The only place where I could finally let the weight settle onto my shoulders without witnesses. The cold metal chair groaned as I sat. My hands shook as I reached into my chest pouch and pulled out the battered Vox recorder I'd kept since the early days of the Varnhold campaign. The casing was dented, stained with old mud and burns. It had survived trenches, bombardments, and the death of every man it once recorded. But it would not survive what I was about to put into it. I set it on the table. Its rune flickered weakly. A confession device, nothing more. My fingers hovered above the activation rune, trembling. I wasn't afraid of punishment. I wasn't afraid of death. I was afraid of forgetting. Afraid of letting the Imperium steal even this final truth from the last man who had seen Ren alive. I pressed the rune. Static whispered through the chamber before settling into a steady hum. "I am Sergeant Gaius Rennek, 3rd Company, Varnhold Regiment." I began, my voice scraping out of my throat like rust. "Recording this against orders, against doctrine, against everything." The Vox crackled, as if the machine spirit hesitated. I forced myself to continue. "Corporal Ren returned from the dead, not as a foe, not as corruption. He came back afraid, confused, human, a breath, cold, heavy, and I killed him." The words trembled in the air, forming a shape that tasted of regret and iron. I swallowed hard. Maybe the Commissar is right. Maybe Ren was a breach, a vessel, a wound. But I saw no daemon in him. I saw no heresy, only a man begging for answers from a galaxy that has no mercy to give. The lumen flickered overhead, casting long shadows across the rusted floor. When he died the first time, I carried him from the trenches with my own hands. I swore I wouldn't let him die alone, again. And yet, I pulled the trigger. A memory flashed Ren's eyes closing, trusting me more deeply than any prayer he had ever spoken. I did it to save the others, to seal the warp breach, to prevent the Commissar from ordering an execution line for every soldier who ever knew his name. I clenched my jaw. But the truth is simpler than that. A long silence, a truth pressing in from all sides. I killed him because he trusted me, and he asked me to protect him. And in this Imperium, protection often means ending a life before the galaxy can torture it further. My voice cracked. I didn't hide it. He remembered the Emperor as a man, not a god. He remembered a voice that did not demand worship. He remembered something listening behind that voice. Something the Imperium fears more than any Xenos. I looked down at my hands. I killed a friend to protect a lie. Static pulsed soft, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. The Manufactorum no longer knew how to make. I don't know what the Emperor truly is, I whispered. But I know what Ren was. He was loyal, brave, kind, and for that, he deserved better than the death I gave him. I reached out and placed a hand over the recorder, feeling the cold metal beneath my palm. This testimony won't leave this Manufactorum. I'll hide it in the walls or bury it under the ash. But I need someone to hear me, even if that someone is a dying machine spirit. A breath shuddered out of me. I loved him like a brother, and I took his life with my own hands. Static washed over the room. No judgment, no forgiveness, only memory. I ended the recording, and the chamber returned to hollow quiet. Somewhere, deep inside the Manufactorum, a chain clinked faintly, as if settling after a long strain. Or perhaps it was Ren's ghost shifting in the cold. Night bled slowly back into the Manufactorum, pooling in the corners like ink. My squad slept fitfully among the rusted conveyor lines, each man wrapped in blankets that could not warm the chill left behind. The Commissar and his stormtroopers had already departed, leaving only a sealed data slate with the official verdict. Incident concluded. No surviving anomalies, no irregularities, no irregularities. As if Ren had never stood here, as if he had never spoken my name, as if he hadn't begged for life in my arms. I sat alone on the upper gantry, staring at the faint shimmer of dust that still clung stubbornly to the metal below what remained of a man I had sworn to protect twice and failed twice. The Manufactorum was silent now, truly silent. Whatever presence had pressed against the walls was gone, retreating back into whatever darkness it called home. Reality had sealed again, leaving only me suspended between guilt and duty. My hands shook as I wrapped the Vox recorder in a strip of cloth torn from my undershirt. I carried it to a service hatch near the roof, where the metal had corroded around its hinges. I pried it open with my combat knife, revealing a narrow cavity filled with dust and abandoned wiring. I placed the recorder inside, not to expose the Emperor, not to challenge doctrine, but to make sure Ren's memory wasn't erased completely. He deserved at least that much. I sealed the hatch with trembling fingers, forcing the bent metal back into place. It wasn't a grave, not truly, but it felt like one. A tomb carved in steel, a secret I would take into every battle that followed. As I stepped back, I felt the weight lifting, not relief, but acceptance. My lungs expanded with the first full breath I'd taken since he returned. The air still tasted metallic, still carried the scent of machine oil and old incense, but it no longer burned in my chest. Below me, Vargas stirred. "Sergeant, you awake?" "Yes," I said. He climbed onto the walkway, boots clanking softly. His eyes were rimmed with exhaustion. "We're being transferred at dawn. Commissar wants the Manufactorum locked down. Says the machine spirits need cleansing rites." "Of course." He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "Sergeant, did you ever figure out why he came back?" I turned toward the cracked window overlooking the dark horizon. The sky beyond it was a smear of ash and distant fires typical of any world the Imperium forgot to save. The faintest glimmer of morning tried to break through, pale and weak. "I think he came back because something refused to let him die." I paused. "And because someone had to remember what he saw." Vargas nodded slowly. "Do you think we'll ever understand it?" "No," I said, "and we're not meant to." He swallowed. "Was it the warp that wanted him?" I almost answered yes. I almost said no. But the truth belonged only to me. "Get the men ready," I said softly. He left without pressing further. Alone again, I rested my palms against the railing, letting the cold metal bite into my skin. I closed my eyes and listened to the quiet, to the stillness, to the emptiness Ren left behind. And, for a moment, I thought I heard footsteps behind me, soft, familiar. I didn't turn. I didn't breathe. Then they faded, dissolving into the hum of dormant machines. Memory, not ghost. Hope, not truth. I opened my eyes. The manufactorum no longer held him, but I did. His fear, his trust, his voice, his final moment. I carried all of it, and I always would. The faint glow of dawn crept across the horizon, turning Ren's settled dust into a muted shimmer. The last thing he ever said echoed in my chest. "I'm scared." I whispered a final promise to the cold air. "I won't forget you." Then, with the last strength left in me, I shaped the only words worthy of ending his story, words quiet enough for the dead to hear. "I live carrying the silence of a man who trusted me beyond death.